Welcome to the Core Collection, Present Like a Master, Module 1, Introduction to the Journey. Bienvenidos and welcome. This is not a course. This is an interactive experience. It's a conversation with many ways to learn. All of it with you, our community, together. Who am I? Deeper than that, I'm Jose Caballero. I'm the executive producer of this experience. I'm really excited and proud to introduce my friend Jeff, who's the director of this experience and whose experience inside corporate and outside in the startup world also we are harnessing and platforming via this course. I'm proud that we're both Art Center alum, and I'm going to pass it on to my friend Jeff.
Thanks, Jose. Yeah, Art Center alum. It's actually where we met years ago, 2 decades ago, right, Jose? I think. I've had the fortune on working in a lot of big organizations listed here: J&J, Nestle, and Amazon. I think even beyond that, I've had Jose got me out of J&J back in 2017, and that was my introduction in the venture world. And so I think my double-edged sword there is really learning the polarities of businesses, right? Startup as well as large organizations. And coming into today's sort of interactive experience, a lot of what I want to bring to the table is that, right? It's who you're speaking to, which is just as important as you as a designer and your experience itself. So happy to be here. Looking forward to kicking this off. Thanks you all for joining. Let's do this. Jose.
Beautiful. So thank you very much. The context first, let's start with that. 66% of you rated yourself a 2 or a 3 out of 5 in presenting. That's basically more than half, almost 2/3 or 3/4. Our goal here for what we're doing is that you can walk into any room, any Zoom, any boardroom or client pitch and own it. Be in complete control of that room. That's our goal. That's our overarching goal. And now with this, oh, Jeff, this is back to you, actually.
Yeah, no worries. I was going to flow in. So if there's one thing, number one lesson I learned in my first presentation class is the goal. Jose laid down the goal in terms of this entire experience. I never go into a meeting without 3 goals, top 3 goals. It's like, you're going to go to a party. Do you know what type of party it is? 100% you probably do want to know what party it is, right? What happens when you go to the wrong party? Exactly. So there's the same thing with presentations. You have to level set. So lesson number 1, if this for some reason is the last thing you end up saying, this is not your experience, goals. Always go to a meeting with 3 goals. Our 3 goals for the day are threefold. Number 1, module 1, we want to make sure that we go through all of our key modules. We spent a lot of time creating this, going back and forth. This is going to set up the cadence for our experience together. Number 2, we want to define this interactive work session, right? This is not a typical course. This is not a typical experience. This is not a typical lecture. It's something that we are basing off the sort of back and forth in the interaction between you all and what we've created. And that's important. And then number 3, not least important, just as important, is this notion of impact commitment. We're committed. Hoping it looks like, and really excited that all of you guys are experienced on this call are committed as well. And I think going back to sort of today's intention, this is close to my heart because it's something that I suffered with and struggled pretty much my whole design career. And I want to see each and every one of you be able to take some, if not all, of these frameworks and tactics to level set and elevate your presenting. With that in mind, let's go to the next section. Jose will take over the problemo, the problem.
El problema, the problem. So confidence, self-doubt, nervousness, freezing. Those are some of the things that you said in our survey. For confidence, you engage the people. For self-doubt, you use a repeatable system. For nervousness, you practice, 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 practice. For freezing, you pause, breathe, and engage. Hello, everybody. How are you? Scattered mind or unorganized thoughts, lots of focus, lots of momentum. For scattered mind, you design wayfinding. For unorganized thoughts, you give structure. For lots of focus, you break it up, meaning the presentation. For lots of momentum, you keep time. That's the keys. The solution, L solution, is these three key beats. Let's call these principles. One is the setup, the build, and the performance. Just remember these like 3 beats: the setup, the build, and the performance. One outcome from the 3 beats: structure creates confidence, preparation quiets the nerves, timing and wayfinding help momentum and focus.
Here we go. Thanks, Jose. We're going to drill down a little deeper in regards to this sort of 3 phases that Jose just mentioned: the setup, the build, and performance. What is the setup? What is the build? And what is the performance?
Jeff, tell us about the setup.
Yeah, let's roll with it, right? The setup. This is the homework, right? So before you even say a word, when you're in the room, you got to know the room. You got to know every person that you're walking in to present. And then within this first step of the setup phase, know your room, every module that we'll be discussing, you'll see 6 sort of different chapters within each. We're going to help you define like who are your typical people that you speak to, right? The 4 audience types. You want to do research, right? Coming from an internal sort of agency, or if you're a freelancer or a contractor, that is going to be a whole different story, right? In terms of how do you even look at researching people, knowing who's in a room. It's not as hard as you think. There are ways and tactics to do it and to approach it, but it's critical. You never want to go into a meeting not knowing who you're going into. With that in mind, who is making the decisions? You got to understand holistically, if that person making decisions isn't in a room, maybe he or she is the next step. Doesn't matter. You should still know the hierarchy and who holds that room. Going to the bottom row, really teasing out C-suite corporate executive versus some predictable marketers, SMEs, etc. We'll drill down there a little bit and have a discussion around that. And then these 2 are kind of related, but understanding, what type of presentation it is, and how that relates to the people you're presenting to, right? I think that this is interesting, right? Is it concept, alignment, final, or is it a work session, right? I think these are sort of tactics that I've used. It was supposed to be a presentation. I said, no, we don't have enough information. I reached out to the marketer. I said, we're going to rephrase this, reframe it, and reposition it as a work session. And we need you to do this X, Y, and Z. Is it and typical sort of question, is it live presentation versus a leave behind? They're 2 different ways of presenting. So that's know your room. Any questions on there? Jose, you want to build on anything on that, or are you good to go?
No, I like the 4 audience types a lot. And that's actually for everyone to kind of put a little note on that as a critical component, because they'll come up again in the near future.
Yeah, for sure. The second section or chapter of the setup is called the first date, right? This is all about setting cadence and authority. I mentioned this when we talked about the goals. Again, I learned this in my only presentation class that I took while I was at Johnson & Johnson, when I failed horribly in front of the US Town Hall marketing team. 3 goals. Again, I never go into a meeting without stating the 3 goals. I might level set, ask questions, but right before I go into presentation, you should always mention your objectives and make sure that everyone's aware, everyone's aligned. And everyone asks, you guys probably have a lot of questions here. I'm going to go through this. Let me know if you have questions. How do you even avoid, the pressure, the stress, the confidence, freezing in a room? There's a lot of techniques and frameworks I've used. These are some of them, and we could drill down when we get into this sort of module. But permission setting. When you're presenting, you're controlling the group and the team. So feel free to ask the team. Do you want to comment now, or do you want to comment end to end? You dictate the pacing and the timing up front. When you do that, you get a lot of respect and confidence from the people you're speaking to.
Staying confident, meaning staying present versus what I used to do, which was just careen into the presentation and lose track of time, and like my head went blank, and by the end of the presentation, everybody's looking like they've been in a one of those explosions in cartoons. That's really critical. And in terms of how to chime in for the live audience, you said, Dan, that it was a banger. You can call him out if you want. It might interrupt us a little bit, but if you feel very much like the church says and response. So please continue, Jeff. I think you are at setting expectations.
Yeah. So, and I'll go how to warm up with a room of questions or set expectations. So, one of the things that I do a lot after goals is an agenda, right? That what the agenda does is establishes cadence. This is what we're doing. I ask questions in the beginning a lot. Why? Well, I do it twofold reasons. Number one, I do it to build the connection with the audience. I mean, that's a huge part of that. It's also if I have a question to let the audience chime in. This is their opportunity. I'm going to present. If you guys want to, I'm going to present 3 concepts first round. If you let me know if you guys want to comment and ask questions after each concept, or would you rather wait till the end? It's a simple question. You'll get feedback. They'll say, I don't mind. It's up to you. Or they might say, we prefer it to end. Again, I do that for multiple reasons, but the main reason is for my confidence. When I get feedback from the people in the room, my blood pressure goes down. So setting expectations, again, with that line, this is your meeting. You have the authority and you need to command that. Now, if someone has questions about what you say or they push back, that's fine. That's where you control it and come up with a decision and a recommendation, right? And then you state objectives and stating objectives clearly. Again, this goes back to what I mentioned about the goals, the permissive setting. You're saying everything in front, right? So when I'm co-presenting or if I'm presenting for the team, but my team's in a meeting, which happens a lot, I might be leading the goals, the table of contents. I might say, Sarah, say my last boss. Do you want to build anything on that? Did I clarify? Did I cover everything? Right. So I'm already connecting with my superior. I'm saying, are you good? Do you need to add anything? I can also do that with my team members, right? My marketing partners, the people I've worked on the deck with. So that builds kind of continuity within the team. I'm representing the team, but it builds continuity and cadence. And then this is an important one, right? I learned this actually. I think my skill set in regards to presenting really jumped after working with Jose. I've noticed at Consensus. I just had more confidence and I just gained a lot of tips and tricks from Jose in regards to interaction, right? It's not a lecture, it's a conversation. I get it. There are some cases where it is a presentation. I'm presenting only me, but you could also bake in questions in the beginning, right? Everyone okay am I ready? Anyone have questions before I start, right? There's no harm or foul doing that. Anything you want to add for a first date, Jose?
Yeah, there's a tip here that from what Jeff is saying about consensus. One of the tips is I always actually pre-set it up with the CEO of the startup that we were meeting with. I've been to tent revivals, so that's the plant, right? In the tent revival that you're going to perform the healing on, that was pre-done, right? So, and I set the rules with the CEO, especially when I walk into the room, because the last thing I want is for the CEO to be against my presentation, right? Or against the approach, because he's going to object to anything that's going against his vision or his agenda. And the people are afraid of actually expressing. And I'm talking about like young CEOs in a very fast moving environment. So long story short, preset it up. Set the success up of your presentation with the executives before you even individually talk to each of them on a call and say, this is what's going to happen.
Exactly. But let me counter that, because I think a lot of people aren't in that position like you were, Jose. You guys might have questions. I'm reading your mind. You don't have access to the C-suites. It doesn't happen a lot. So what do? Right?
True. That is true.
You have to find a conduit, right? You have to find a what I call like a design champion. If you're getting hired by a marketer or a designer, you have to connect with that person
yes.
to understand what's the best way to move forward with a meeting. You never want to go cold. Never want to go cold.
And you're right. In a corporate environment, in a big company, you're not going to talk to CEO. You're going to talk to a marketing VP or marketing director or a marketing person. Actually, it might not even be a senior person. You're very right on that, Jeff.
What if you are working cold and it's a cold pitch, and so you're just presenting your services, for example, and you don't have time to do anything but ancillary research?
That's a great question. I would look at adjacency. So let's say it's like in renewable energy, right? Then that's LinkedIn. That's scouring, like looking online to try to find as much information about that company in renewable energy, the founders, Think out of Google and research. I would spend a lot of time really understanding that company, the people, the C-suite, the board members, the founders, and then the adjacencies. What are the companies similar to that, right? It might not get you like the fidelity that you want to the company, but it educates you. And I promise that when you go to that meeting, they will be surprised that you know so much about them and their industry.
Yeah, do the best you can.
Basically, yeah. That's a good question. Any other questions before we go to the build? Are you guys are seeing how these don't work in isolation, right? So know your room, right? Was important. And then the first date. So now we're building a layer like a cake, right? So now when we go into the build, this perfect segue. I think, Dan, you asked that question. This is all about, and Scott, I think, this is probably where you'll be excited. This is where you go into like, now, how do you start building the deck, right? How do you turn the narrative into visual, repeatable, impossible to forget sort of system and framework? There's two steps to this. The one is what we're calling the story arc, and the second is make it visual. At a certain point, I'll share the work that I was doing for Nestle's incubator. That one of my highlights in my career. Why? Because it really got me to think this way. And when I'm not going to sort of say I always start with story arc. Sometimes I will go visual, right? Because I already know the project, the client, etc. But there are a lot of times, I'm sure a lot of you have experienced this, when you're going to design a deck and you just get lost in it. There's too much fluff. You don't know how to narrow down. Why? It's because the narrative's not strong enough. You didn't focus too much on a narrative. So if it's a presentation, a pitch, something where you really need to refine and have the most powerful narrative, I always start with the story, and that is pen to paper. It could be digital. It doesn't matter. It could be storyboarding. I use it all. And it really is dependent on the presentation itself, right?
And on the people you're working with, by the way, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you and I are designers, and you and I can work in Figma, but I can't work in Figma with someone else that's not a designer. Or what I do for myself, because I'll get lost in the sauce. I actually use color paper. You can use 8.5 by 11 white paper, but I use 8.5 by 11 color paper, and I do the beginning and the middle and the end, and then I kind of fill stuff out and I put it out on the floor, and I stand up and I look at it, and then I write with a Sharpie so that I can read it from being standing up, and it doesn't let me write too much stuff. Like I can't actually with a Sharpie, with how messy I am, there's no way for me to overbear it, right? That's critical, because if I don't do that and then I put that on my desk right next to me and I go slide by slide, that's on paper there in very unrecognizable writing, and then I start building the slides that way. So I don't do it in any other way. Otherwise, I'll get lost in the sauce and I'll start doing kerning on the letters, in the freaking slide for 2 hours.
I've seen you do that, yeah. And use Post-its, but use also just color paper as well. I've seen that. Yeah, and so that's partly like understanding what works best for you. We don't work similarly, right? We all work differently. So however you want to build the narrative, paper, on FigJam, Post-its, sketchbook, but that spine method of goals, problem solution, process outcome, is important. Obviously, depending on the presentation, you build on that. So understand what's best in terms of getting the idea out. But the important thing here is focusing on the narrative and the story, right? You can mix it and cut it as different ways you want to. Wireframing, I believe we're all UX designers, right? Whether that's our label or not, because at the end of the day, you're thinking about user experience, right? Regardless. So we're all sort of UX designers. I learned this going back to the bottom row. One of my favorite teachers, Roland Young, RP, great influence in sort of my design education. I remember we were watching in I think this was when Al Gore was running for presidency, and we were watching sort of the debates, but something led to him saying I think he was commenting on someone presenting about how they just didn't look like they knew what they're talking about, or they just didn't feel like they're an element. And that's when he taught me like the most important thing in life and with presenting is to make sure that you present only as yourself and not anyone else, right? We all have a different rhythm and cadence and a way of working. It's not, you learn from people, you'll learn a lot, hopefully, from this course. But at the end of the day, the more you practice, the more you'll learn how you like to present and your cadence to people. Appendix. I use the appendix a lot. I feel like you become a better storyteller when you learn how to edit You know, it's all about editing, right? I mean, you do the same thing with design. You know, brand guidelines is all about editing. So narrating and editing a story is similar, right? So learn how to edit. I think that's important. With pitch decks, when I help pitch decks, I tell founders, it is like dating. Again, it goes back to dating. You don't want to tell everyone everything. It's boring, right? So you have to leave a sense of sort of suspense. You want to tease the guys that are gonna and women that might give you $10 million. You got to be provocative, right? Put everything else, all the data in appendix. That it's good if they ask you questions. It's not good if everyone's silent and they're not interesting. They're not interested. That's an issue. And then, you know, presenting is important. It's great. It needs to happen. Jose and I spent a lot of time understanding how we've presented in the past before, but not in this way for a course. And it's different. And there's really no easy answer. It's just we're practicing, right? For running the show, putting in the time, etc. That's the story arc. Second part, this is where we're all experts. It's about making it visual. And I'm sure you guys found, like, you guys have your own rhythm in regards to how much time do you spend on a story versus visual, and back and forth and back and forth, right? That's a natural sort of journey and evolution in designing. The one slide, one idea rule, great, right? I think that helps you solidify, like, what's the 1 point idea that you want to communicate in that one slide, right? We talked about the live presentation versus leave behinds. You know, leverage brand guidelines when you can. If you don't have one, keep it simple, right? Keep it simple. Leveraging AI, that's a huge topic, right? You do leverage AI, but edit it so it doesn't feel AI. Like I walk down in my street here in Bed-Stuy, and there's a lot of mom and pop stores, a Bangladeshi, African, a chicken sandwich place over here. They're all using AI for their posters, and they all look the same, right? That's what you don't want when you're working with your client or pitching or whatnot. So obviously leverage AI, but edit when you can, right?
I don't pay attention to AI like decks very much, and I learned that the hard way because I had a client who was like, "Is this made with AI?" And they immediately like went like, "Okay."
Yeah.
Scott, I'm going to show you how I take a deck and use AI to make it, but make it not look like AI very quickly, versus like people that just put it out straight. And I'm like, oof. Okay, continue, Jeff.
No, that's great. Well, I'm sure we'll have a lot of discussions there. This goes back. The next one's going back to who you're speaking to, right? Are you speaking to a designer, a CEO, a corporate subject matter expertise? Chances are you might be speaking to a multiple range of subject matter expertises. What do you do? How do you even design a presentation? That's a big question, and one that, you know, we could dive in deeper there. But what you do is you mix it up, right? You baseline it, and you know, you kind of want to make sure you level set what's the important information, and you can have pages that are more detailed if needed for, I guess that's the dorky evil, right? But also, again, the appendix, right? The appendix is what you use the appendix for, all the pithy charts. Not pithy, I guess, the more like detailed charts. And diagrams. I'm excited to share a lot of diagrams. Actually, this one on here on the top right-hand corner is sort of like the framework I use a lot in presentations, right? Where it's the floor plan, right? It's like a physical floor plan of the steps, the setup, the build, and the performance, right? I'll use little keys, color coordinate keys in my deck if needed, if it makes sense, to show the client or even the partner where I'm at in this journey. If you're doing user experience journeys, that might be interesting, right? But there's ways that you could visually add these diagrams, and I've done so many diagrams that are fun. Like a visual.
It's a visual table of content. Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Exactly. You know, like one of the things that does for me, and as a producer in this case, but when you're co-presenting, so like right now I'm looking at the time and I'm looking at that, and I know that we can show a little bit of the performance section, but then really go into the exercises and then post the rest of the performance section in the group inside Circle.so platform. But that without that, I wouldn't have known, right? Where are we? Where exactly are we? And Jeff is a master at doing those, so I love that. Anyway,
I can speed up. I can speed up too.
Let's look at the no need to speed up. I think we should look at the performance.
Okay.
Well, actually, let's poll the audience. So would you want to see each of these components in the performance? Ooh, look at how the table of content moves. Nice. Would you like to see and then look at the process and just go straight through, or do you want to jump into the exercises and come back to that? Like show of hands. There's a way to vote, but just do it in the chat.
Oh yeah,
like,
plus one
all the way.
Okay.
Give us at least a quick overview.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
I could jump. I could go through, and this, yeah, the performance. I think the one that is a little trickier, right? This is like running the show, and this is the one that's gonna come with practice. Next slide. So 5 steps here, right? Running the show. I actually had a really good fortune to work with one of Ted's TED Talk speaker, the coach. So she actually coached the speakers at TED. She's a good friend of mine, and she inspired me in regards to like pitching. We can go through that. I know, Scott, you do a lot of pitching now, so you would love some of these. At the end of the day, it's about energy. How do you control the energy of a room, right? That's critical. The callback technique, that's about like closure, right? And the loop. You start, you end. And then there's tactics like silence of a comedian, or this idea of making the room uncomfortable on purpose, right? It's gaps. You know, if you think about a movie, if a movie was the same sort of pace, kind of be boring. Think about your performance also as like a movie. That helps. Next is the know your time. This is just respect, right? I think, you know, you never want to be in a position where someone is irritated because it's a 30-minute meeting. It's a 60 minutes now. It's respecting your audience, really, at the end of the day. Reading the room continuously. How's the room look, right? Scanning the room. But also, you know, there's tactics like, oh, we're 5 minutes to the end. Do you guys have a hard stop, or can we continue? That's super okay to ask, right? And that's more respectful than just going through the 30 minutes. Next one is the third chapter of the performance is handle the pushback. Oh, Jose, can we go to the next one?
Oh, yes. Sorry, I was reading comments. I was reading comments.
Oh, yeah. Handle any comments. Yeah, exactly. No one sticks to the schedule, which is fine. I think that's like, if I'm presenting, that's where I butt in and I say, just to be, you know, we're at time. Does the team have extra time to go through this, or do you want to, you know, take this offline or have another meeting? So I think that's it, right? It's never perfect, for sure. I totally agree on that. The pushback. So handling the pushback, you know, I think clients sometimes don't like the work, don't like the timing, don't like how much it's going to cost. So this is really about how do you manage that, right? What are ways to level set that for the team? And I think at the end of the day, don't be afraid to push back and use tactics to push back in a way that's not aggressive, which is what it's about. Second to last, it's really about practice, right? Practice. We run rehearsals. In Figma, I go through the deck from the beginning to the end, like I'm presenting. I make mental notes. I go back and forth. I will go back and forth in the first 2 or 3 slides to make sure it's okay, and I make the edits right away. And then I go back, go back. I don't record myself. I have in the past. I actually, when I worked at Nestle, I had recorded the people speaking so they could watch it, and I had them do that. You know,
this one's really good. The presenting in Figma versus Google Slides, I've done all, and actually it does shape the behavior. Like Figma, you can pull out and you can look this, you can look right, you can look left, and then you can see the whole thing and the gestalt of it, and you can go, it's like art. You're creating, I'm actually very excited that we've done it that way. Because in Google Slides, you can get lost in the sauce, and nobody really thinks about like putting it into index mode or whatever the mode is that you see all of it, and then moving the slides around, because it's too hard. So what I do for CEOs is I print out every slide and we put it on the floor, because anyway, but yes. How did you build your spine, Jeff?
Yeah, so you know, design the flow before touching angel. That goes back to you know, the arc, right? So I try my best, depending on it, on the meeting presentation, to write everything in narrative form, right? Before I even go into the deck, you know. But again, it really depends. I think there's Felice, when to answer on the spot and instead take your time. Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's a tricky one, right? It depends on the team. It depends what they're asking. I sometimes don't answer right away, and I answer with a question, and it took me time to get the confidence. You know, I'm such a sometimes a pleaser, right? That I just want to make sure I do the best work, fast work. I'm bringing value, that it hurts me because I just want to make sure everyone's happy. But when it comes to presenting and so forth, and timing and budget, I've learned that sometimes you just can't commit, and I say, if it's okay, I'll come back with you at the end of the day, or I'll ask a question to get more clarity, right? That's a respectful answer, to be honest.
Yeah. Is it okay if you ask, is it okay if we wait till the end? Would you be okay?
Exactly.
Cool. All right, we'll wait for that.
Exactly.
But make what I actually really do too is I
Yeah,
always
what do
have
you do?
index cards and I write it down. I say, that's a great question. Let me write it down, repeat it for me. Okay, cool. I'm gonna answer it at the end. Thank you. I don't actually give him the option. I just go, whoop. But I do answer it, right?
Yeah.
Anyway.
So exactly. Okay.
This
Great
thing, how to
question.
practice with a partner, the co-creation, dynamic, co-presentation, who leads, who supports, handoff, clean. We're doing, I think, a good job. I'll give us a 95.
I think, yeah, I mean, we rehearsed it before. We put like, you mentioned this, Jose, you like the time. You're more of a fan than I am, but it works. It's worked, right? It works. We made it work. And then, yeah, building a post-presentation habit, like cadence. This is about, now with AI capture, that's great. But, it's all about what's the setup for the next meeting, making sure that you have the stakeholders in the meeting, that you have clear, actionable next steps, right? And then you follow up right away. In a lot of cases, schedule a meeting after the call. And then the close, right? This one is a tricky one too, right? How do you return back to those 3 goals? Jose has his own way of doing this, right? Or in terms of like, did everyone get what they wanted? I think for me, I might not be like a literal, like, let's go back to the 3 goals, but I will like summarize, like the decision that needs to happen in my own kind of way. I think next steps, as we mentioned in the last one, is important. Coming up with a framework for following up is good as well. Turning a great room into a signed contract. So yeah, I mean, I think that one is important as well, right? How do you build that connection with a team that it becomes the job, right? Or a decision.
Thank you, everybody, for being here.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, 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 bye.
Ciao.